Perfect. Thank you very much. Just be 1 second here. So I'd like to call the meeting to order, please. First, I'd like to acknowledgement of Indigenous peoples. The town of Rocky Mountain House, which is to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous peoples, including the Blackfoot, Cree, Saulteaux, Stoney, and Métis. Number 3, adoption of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda or additions? Can we have? Yes.
If there's no additions to the agenda, I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Perfect. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, Councillor Phillips. Number 4, delegations. Thank you, Staff Sergeant Dinsdale, for presenting to council today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be here whenever you need me to be. That's not a problem whatsoever. And again, congratulations to the new mayor and council. I look forward to working with the town leadership moving forward in a productive way. So this afternoon, you've called me here to go over the quarterly report, the Q2 report for Rocky Mountain House. Aside from the cover letter, the report covers several areas. Basically, it covers the priorities of our annual performance plan that were kind of identified in consultation with the different communities in the detachment area, and address what are seen as the priority issues for crime and policing issues in the Rocky Mountain House area. The first part, well, not the first part. The third part of our APP is community engagement, communicating effectively with our communities. This has been a real struggle over the last year and a half because of COVID restrictions. However, on the first page, you can see that we still managed to have several community consultations going on in the breaks between restrictions being imposed and lifted and those kinds of things. And again, these aren't all solely with the town of Rocky Mountain House. These are just consultations that I do with different groups and leadership throughout the detachment area. Crime reduction is our #1 priority. It's a huge issue both here in town, municipally and rurally. One of the core drivers of crime is illicit drug use, substance abuse, and addictions. So reducing substance abuse via the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act has been impacted by COVID as well. Our ability to get out there and interact with people face to face, of course, is limited because of the restrictions of the pandemic. However, our members have found ways to get it kind of around the restrictions and are still be able to make those contacts, develop intelligence reports, and engage in investigations. So in the last quarter, 7 possession for the purpose of trafficking investigations were conducted. 5 of those files were cleared by charges of possession for the purpose of trafficking. For the most part, the predominant drug that we're seeing is methamphetamine. That's just an absolute plague on communities all across Alberta. It's not like Rocky Mountain House is an anomaly in that. The majority of these investigations were led by our crime reduction unit. So the 2 members that we've assigned on a permanent basis to crime reduction activities, and they had some good success. Out of those investigations, 7 suspects were charged. A total of 13 charges were laid, and significant amounts of drugs, cash, and some firearms were seized from those offenders involved. So that was still a success despite the COVID impact that's had on policing. The prevention and reduction of property crime. So the Rocky Mountain House Detachment has been involved in a program called Data to Action, and this has been led at the divisional level for the past year, a little bit better than a year now. And now it's also being done at a district level. And Data to Action is really, we benefit from a more enhanced criminal analysis from the division level. So they look at all of our crime And they're able to spend the time necessary to make connections, to show us trends, to show us, they do crime mapping on a pretty intensive basis, but they can connect vehicles and subjects to certain behaviors. And that really allows us to direct our enforcement where it's necessary. So, and we've seen positive results in short periods of time. We've seen where that directed policing using that analysis has shifted crime away from certain areas. You know, we'd have a hot spot of break and enters in a certain area. We would dedicate some more time at specific times of day. Even it gets down to what time of day should we be in there and being visible. And we've seen that already have impact. And I don't want to say it's stopping crime, but it's certainly shifting it away from those areas. So we're being effective in doing that. And then where they shift to, we'll get analysis on that, and we'll continue to direct our efforts in a more educated way than versus just blanket policing. So this kind of ties into police visibility, and lots of folks that we speak to, you know, we never see police cars. If you're living in a neighborhood that isn't the subject of a lot of crime, you will not see a lot of police cars, because we're just dedicating, you know, the time to send members to those areas where the crime and the criminals happen to be. So if that's not your neighborhood, that's a good thing, really. But we do also still make efforts to get police visibility and patrolling in all areas of town when we can. So between using data to action and then some efforts to keep police officers on the road using what we call the PROS data center, where they can simply call in their reports, still being in their police car and on the road. And then the police access tool, which is those mobile workstations in the car. We've been able to maintain visibility and presence in the community more than perhaps we have in the past. All told, this has kind of reduced crime in the detachment area by 21% over the past year. Now, I'd love to say that's 100% the positive results of your policing. Some of it is. Some of it I do believe, because crime trends or property crime has gone down across the province over the last year in a dramatic sense. And I have the personal belief that the pandemic monies that were distributed, the CERB payments and those kinds of things, anyone could apply for it and get it. So people who might have been inclined to being involved in crime to support their lifestyle had some government funding to do it over the last year. And when we see the end of CERB and some of those monies drying up, I'll knock on wood and say I hope it doesn't happen, but we may see crime trend up a little bit as people have to return to other means to support that lifestyle. And prevent and reduce the impact of prolific offenders. All too often, people are very familiar with the term, the revolving door of justice. We catch them, send them to court releases them, and away we go again. So we have a number of known prolific offenders that reside in the detachment area, some in town, some in county. And because we know that, you know, this core group of people is responsible for the bulk of your crime at any given time, we spend extra efforts dedicated to keeping tabs on those known offenders. So if they're on court enforceable conditions, where they're checking those conditions, curfews, no contact orders, abstain clauses, those kinds of things. And that tends to help keep a lid on it, for the lack of a better term, keeping tabs on those known prolific offenders. We basically use a filing system called Project Summit that tracks these targets, identifies people who should be on this list, tracks them, and then we follow up with the checks that are necessary on those subjects to be certain that they're maintaining their conditions of release or probation or whatever the order may be. And it kind of keeps us on their radar, and perhaps their behavior is moderated a little bit by that. So the second quarter saw us checking known prolific offenders in excess of 100 times over that quarter, and 23 subjects were charged during that time frame with failing to comply by conditions imposed on them by either an interim release or probation. The crime reduction unit, they effected 32 arrests in the quarter and executed 2 search warrants and recovered 6 firearms in relation to these known offenders. This will continue, of course, moving forward. This is a project that's been maintained at the detachment for I think coming up on 2 years now. We're going to probably maintain it for some time to come. because that revolving door keeps putting our prolific offenders back on our radar. And so we'll do our best to keep tabs on them and hopefully impact crime rates in a positive way. Our second priority, of course, traffic safety or road safety is always a priority. In the first quarter, we saw some JFO check stops, second quarter as well. We saw some joint force operation check stops in conjunction with various long weekends over the summer months and the increased tourist traffic. And then as of late, there's been actually some going on just in town, just random check stops being put on by the watches as they're working. So in this reporting period, they checked approximately 2,000 vehicles or more. It's not hard to rack up 2,000 vehicles on a long weekend. You're running a check stop on 11. So approximately 900 mandatory alcohol screening tests were administered in that time frame, and there were no fails. That's a super positive out of all this, is that finally 40 years into it, the message about impaired driving seems to be coming along. There were several charges laid, though. Of course, I'm not going to read through all of them, but if you have a gander at the report, you can see the number of charges that were written and 18 written warnings. The pandemic has affected our ability to a certain degree. I mean, we can still patrol, we can still stop vehicles for any number of reasons. We can look for safe driving habits in relation to distracted driving, traffic control, stoplights, stop signs, those kinds of things. However, we haven't been able to conduct any radar training in the past 18 months because in-person training has been impacted by the pandemic. So that gives us a bit of a training gap in our abilities. So we still keep trying to plan for it. Hopefully we'll get that gap filled here in the coming year over the winter time if numbers come down and we can begin training again. Then we'll get some members trained, and that'll hopefully step up our ability to do enforcement with speed related offenses. As I said, though, there's any number of offenses that can be investigated otherwise, which is the message I keep giving these young members. They don't have to be speeding to be committing a traffic offense. Go and do your patrolling. Go get them. So 10 traffic operations over the quarter. That includes, that's kind of planned traffic operations. So these check stops, joint force operation check stops, and then once the school year began, some dedicated school zone patrolling. We're going to be picking up. I've had some concerns, not necessarily in town. I think I have heard a couple in town, but lots in the rural areas about school bus stop signs and lights not being really paid much attention to. So we're going to look at coming up with a plan to get some members out on the road at that time of day when they're picking up or dropping off to start enforcing the school bus safety issue. It's tragedy waiting to happen if people ignore those signs. And then we worked with several partners in doing traffic over the last quarter, including sheriffs, commercial vehicles, fish and wildlife, the CPOs, and the RCMP. So it's great when we can get all those enforcement agencies together to do it. It certainly makes it a more interesting event when you have different sets of eyes looking at things for different sets of reasons. So, and then of course we said the third priority, which talked about the list of meetings on the first page, 10 community engagements over the quarter, including meetings with Rocky Mountain House Town Council, the Clearwater County Council, Ocheesan Central First Nations leadership, several community groups, the West Central Operator Justice Committee, Clearwater County Rural Crime Watch, Clearwater County Police Advisory Committee was kind of reinstituted, engaged last quarter, and of course the town of Rocky Mountain House Police Advisory Committee. I have yet to have the opportunity or the availability to do an in-person town hall. I'd hope to be able to do it by now because there's no making up for that in-person engagement with the public at large. Hopefully, again, if things go the right way, we'll be able to plan for it this coming winter at some point in time. I tried to do it virtually with an invitation for the public to send me their concerns, questions, or comments via email or snail mail. And it was just an underwhelming response to that. Unfortunately, it was, I mean, I thank the people that did respond, but I was expecting a lot more than I got. So the crime statistics in general, as I said, overall, yeah, crime in general is down. The only increase we saw in the last quarter was an increase in persons crimes compared to that same reporting period over the last year, and it was up by 5%. So 46 this year versus 44 in the past year. So not a huge increase in actual numbers, but again, a byproduct perhaps of some of the restrictions. There was some concerns about seeing a trend in an uptick in interpersonal violence, interfamilial violence. We didn't, again, knock on wood, we didn't see a huge increase in that, but there was some numbers that were up a little bit. People are stuck together sometimes, and they just don't have that ability to be apart, and sometimes that causes for some friction and results in unfortunate violence. So overall, as I said earlier, the overall reduction in crime, again, I'd like to think it's at least in part due to our efforts, our ongoing efforts of disrupting crime and preventing it. The pandemic may have had some play in that, and of course, the money that was injected into communities and households as a result of the pandemic gave people an alternative to perhaps criminal acts to support their lifestyle or their addictions issues. We will, regardless, keep up on our efforts to do that. Human resource wise, you have 14 positions established pursuant to your contract. It says working 15, and be careful. I want to be careful that I don't think that you're actually paying for more than your contract. There's 15 working because you've got someone double bunked, and there's a long-term leave, like a maternity leave. So we're not paying double the salary. It's just, I wanted to make sure that wasn't misleading. But we were in good shape on the contract. We do have every position filled and someone working in the position. And all of our municipal employee positions are full again. They don't account for that in there, but we did manage to fill a couple of vacancies that existed. So support staff side, we're only short one public servant position, and we're kind of waiting on that because of an unknown variable with a long-term sick leave situation. Financial and operating and maintenance costs. So the financial plan is looking at about $2 million, $2.7 million being spent, and then the 70% ratio of that is just a hair over $2 million for the town itself in policing costs. Some various adjustments have been made with forecasts for various program areas. A potential payout of excess leave. So the RCMP, of course, everyone's probably aware, are now a unionized work environment. They've negotiated a collective agreement with the Treasury Board of Canada, and that's resulted in a pay increase and some rules about excess leave and what members are allowed to carry for excess leave over and above their annual allotment of leave. So they're only allowed to carry twice their annual allotment of hours. And then the collective agreement says any excess of that leave will be paid out on an annual basis. So we are working with the members who have been identified. There's only 4 or 5 in our detachment that have those excess leave hours. And we are advising them that they have to come up with a leave plan to start utilizing this leave. It's a tough sell in COVID because they take their leave and they go home and they can't travel or doing those things. So, but nonetheless, we're aware of that, and we're trying to get that adjusted. So no adjustments to the financial data that you see here has been made to reflect the pay raise yet. I'm sure that the next quarter they'll start coming out with numbers that will more accurately reflect what the pay raise will mean to your budget. No significant expenditures out of the norm over the past quarter. There was some extra duty pay costs to cover off some of shortages on the watches. That's not a regular ongoing thing. It happens to crop up from time to time. And then some unexpected costs associated to vehicle repairs. They're, the members are human. They have accidents on occasion, and we have to repair vehicles. So there are always those unknowns to deal with. The detachment building, of course, is 30 plus years old now, and maintenance and repair costs continue to be a little bit of a burden and a concern. And right now we're undergoing a minor renovation. It just involved roofing, some lighting, and some paint and flooring. And not sure what we're going to do to address our crowding issue in the workplace until a new facility can be looked at. We're looking at the possibility of maybe some portable like trailer or portable office space to the lot to the south of us, if that becomes an option to look at. It's just, I've got members coming in and I just don't know where they're going to go to work. The building, I've said this before at council, I mean, that building was designed and opened to house 27 employees, and we're looking at 56 right now. So it's more than doubled as far as accommodating employees, but the space hasn't changed. So we'll make it work. We always do. But that's kind of a growing issue. It's not an occupational health and safety issue at this point in time, but you reach a certain point and then it certainly does become something to view at from that point of view. Definitions I won't go over. And then we already talked about the crime statistics on the last page. It just breaks it down in a little bit more detail. The only other document I brought, and it wasn't included in your package, it just talks about clearance rates. And when we mention clearance rates, we talk about investigations that are basically solved or cleared by charge or cleared by some sort of explanation versus just unsolved. And overall, for persons crimes in Rocky Mountain House over the last quarter, we had a 70% clearance rate, which is pretty good, actually. That's typically, if they're unsolved, it's due to lack of, there's very few persons crimes where the perpetrator is unknown. If we can't solve it, it's usually due to lack of cooperation by the victim or witnesses. So 70% is pretty good. That's up from previous quarters by 13, 14%. So property crime, unfortunately, our clearance rate dropped a little bit in the last quarter. We're down around 19%. Lots of property crime is that I woke up in the morning, there's no suspects, there's no witnesses, there's not a lot of evidence at the scene. So clearance rates typically are lower for property crime. We were running at about 21, 22% there before, but now it's dropped a little bit. So we'll keep pushing members to ensure that they're conducting thorough investigations and that we're not solving them, not for lack of trying, but just because of the lack of evidence. And then other criminal code, which involves weapons, disturbing the peace, breaches, those kinds of things, we had a 65% clearance rate. So overall, we're running at about 34% for all criminal code matters, which doesn't sound impressive, but that's a little bit above average across the division, actually. So the members are doing some pretty good work in their investigations. And short of any questions you may have, that's the information that I have for you today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you coming today to see us all, Staff Sergeant Dinsdale. So do we have any questions?
I actually have two questions. The first one is with the new 54th Street extension that was brought in. Obviously, it's much better from a emergency response point of view and safety point of view. I'm just wondering if that has related to a little upsurge in a crime point of view, just because now there's two exits out of there as opposed to one.
We are anecdotally, I haven't looked at the numbers, but anecdotally, I am hearing concerns about an increase in the ability for criminal traffic to go through. Whereas the old way, it was one way in, one way out. It was maybe perhaps a little bit less convenient. Whereas now they can go in one way and just continue right through and leave and make a circuit versus, going in and mucking about and then risking being caught in that kind of pinch point of a single access in and out. So I'll have to look at some numbers and some crime mapping to see if it actually correlates to an actual uptick in crime. I did have some calls from citizens questioning a larger than normal police presence in and around the train crossing area and the wooded area there. We're quite familiar with the fact that there are some squatters issues, homeless camps, those kinds of things that happen there from time to time. And there was a couple of different locations on either side of the road where people had been setting up these bush camps, and some of them we know are associated to some of that petty crime. Not petty crime, but the thefts and the minor crime that was going on. So there's some stolen property that was recovered when the camps were removed, and those people were kind of displaced. I've heard they've moved somewhere else in town, so we'll have to continue to see if that's in fact the case. And see, there's just the problem with that is if we look at those people from a point of view as being homeless, we don't really have anywhere to send them. We can make referrals to agencies that might be able to assist them with issues, be it mental health, addictions, or otherwise that they may be facing that are contributing to them living in that kind of situation. But that's the horse to water analogy. You can make the referral if they don't want the help. There's not much more we have the authority to do than that. So that kind of explained the increase in police presence there over that time frame. And I don't know, again, people following up that homelessness concern with me, and if they've got nowhere to go, and I said, well, we can't just leave them in that situation. It creates concerns on a number of levels. Like there's public health issues, there's public safety issues, there's concerns about garbage and the environment and what's happening in and around these camps. And we've got a lot of things that we have to consider. So it's not as simple as saying, well, they're not hurting anyone there. Well, the evidence suggests otherwise.
Sorry, and the second question I had is when I was previously on the policing committee, we had an inquiry regarding provincial and municipal side. The officers don't have any borders; they go to wherever the calls are needed. But just if there's any follow up or any information you have on the amount of time per call, just so we know that we have the right mix of municipal and provincial officers. Typically, a call in Rocky would take far less time than a call out in Nordic, for instance.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm cognizant of our obligations to the municipal policing service agreement and the members who are assigned to the contract. So to that collator number that we use that says you're a municipal police officer, you're provincial, they're given, and all the supervisors as well, quite clear direction that this is a contract we're obligated to fulfill, and the members have to stay in town and address municipal policing issues. There's the caveat in all those agreements, however, as you allude to, that in emergent or exigent circumstances, they can leave town to go and assist elsewhere. And that happens more often than I would like to see. But that's just the reality of what we're dealing with. And for officer and public safety reasons, those conditions have to be in that contract, because if there were a member working in town and a member in the provincial side out in Nordeg needed some emergency help and the municipal member said, I can't leave town, that's just, unacceptable from an employer point of view. Calls for service, like we have really 3 agreements that we address out of the Rocky Mountain House Detachment, or that we're responsible to: the municipal policing service agreement, the provincial policing service agreement for Clearwater County, and then there is a CTA agreement, or a community tripartite agreement, that we have 4 positions assigned to for the Sunchild and Ochese First Nations. And again, similar concept. That's a contractual obligation to have those members policing those communities unless there's an emergency and they have to leave to help either in town or just on the provincial side. Our work kind of breaks down basically by thirds, really. It's about a third of our work is from town, about a third is from the county, and about a third is from our Indigenous communities. So our watches are set up in such a way to reflect kind of that balance, that call for service balance. So on any given watch, you're going to have, 3 municipal members, 2 or 3 provincial members, and then a CTA member, just so we can address all of our contracts on a 24-hour basis. It doesn't really account for, absences or if someone's away on leave, or so one area might be a little bit shorter than the other. But again, when it comes to that, we do work collectively when necessary. You're not going to have a provincial member hesitant to respond to a call for service in town because the municipal member is unavailable. So we're doing our best to ensure that we meet our obligations to all those contracts, utilizing members where they have to be utilized at times. But as far as numbers go and how often municipal members are utilized outside of town, I'll probably have to go to division and get our analysts at division to kind of pull those individual members and see, get me a chart of what they've been attached to, as far as, because I'll have to use addresses, to be able to get a determining number on that. It may take a little bit of time, but I will certainly see if I can dig up some numbers that will give you some information on that.
Yeah, is that something that you would be able to do, like moving forward on a consistent basis, is to track that? Because because it is a contract for service, right?
Mhm.
And obviously people can say whatever they want, but it'd be nice to have like evidence to back it up, to
Mhm.
say,
Again, I'll have to look into that. I don't know if there is a mechanism that's going to make tracking that on an ongoing basis really easy.
Right.
I can see them. Well, I can pull up the individual members. I can see what work they're attached to. I'll look into it. I'll see if it can be done on a regular basis or an ongoing basis. It might mean a lot more work for some support staff, but we'll
Yeah.
see what we can do.
Yeah, perfect. Does anybody else have any questions for? Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anytime. Enjoy the rest of your day. Can't complain about this kind of weather in November.
No, exactly. Thank you so much. Today. Moving forward, we're at number 5, adoption of previous minutes. 5.1, to adopt the regular council meeting minutes of October 12th of 2021.
I'll adopt the minutes from the October 12th, 2021 meeting.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Constable Hutchinson. All in favor? Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Counselor. Carried. So 5.2, there is a change to the minutes. So in section 10.2 procedural bylaw, the resolution 2021-462 from Councillor Maren Fraser, be it resolved that council accepts the council procedural bylaw to conduct bylaw. That was just a last minute change to the minutes of 5.2. So can I have a motion to accept the minutes with the change, please?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as changed.
Thank you very much. Councillor Boniface, I almost called you Constable, yes. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Delegation business. Motion to accept for information the second quarter policing report, the municipal crime statistics Q2 2017 and 2021. Can I have a motion to accept that for information?
I can make that motion.
Thank you very much. Counselor Fraser, all in favor? Carried. New business. We have an RFD for Cape Central Alberta Economic Partnership. Turning that over to Mr. Kraus.
Thank you, Mayor. So council has passed a resolution for consideration of going back to Cape. And administration has drafted the report for council, which includes the financial implications of being a member, which is included in your report. So the anticipated annual costs, considering per diems and membership to Cape, would be around 5,500. We have contacted Cape, and they have advised us that that membership fee goes up annually for the next 3 years, 10 cents per capita. On an organizational basis, it doesn't really impact the organization to be with Cape. Our economic development officer would probably be more involved with them, which might increase his workload, but nothing substantial we are anticipating. So we turn it over to council to discuss the option.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kraus. So I just wanted to say that I've received quite a bit more information in the last couple of days. I talked to Mayor Megan, gosh, I didn't write down her last name, from Sylvan Lake. She's replacing Sean McIntyre that came and spoke to council the other day. And so I'm just wondering if you would like to move the discussion to the next council meeting so that more information can be presented, as there's still some outstanding. Also, on the 16th of November, there is a delegation coming to Cape at the Chamber of Commerce luncheon meeting from 11 to 1, and it might be beneficial to get some information from that, or would you like to discuss it further first?
I'd like to wait and get the more information on that chamber meeting. Sounds like be some good information coming out there.
Could we just decide to wait on these until our strat planning in the end of the month? Or is that, when's the chamber? What did you say that
It's
was?
the 16th, so it would be the day of our next council meeting, the day before we go to the AUMA. It's like that lunch, and then it's our council meeting, and then we go to
Right.
AUMA.
So our strat planning is on the 25th, 26th. Why don't we just leave it till, if we're gonna be changing committees and organizations that we're members of, why don't we leave it till our strat planning, and then we can go over all the information on everything.
That sounds fantastic. Yeah, that sounds really good, because, yes, Mr. Phil.
And one step further than that, even our service level reviews, just to see what we're part of, what our financial implications are going to be. It may take that to the next step beyond the strategic planning to the service level to see what service levels we want to provide.
So actually, the reason I brought it to council today is because we're having a meeting, or we're trying to get a meeting with Alberta Transportation for a Highway 11 like construction. And it seems somewhat important to take the initiative to join is it a committee, a group such as Cape, with that intention in mind, that we're trying to seek him the information at the AUMA with a meeting with them. We're waiting to hear back from transportation, right? We have one meeting set, but we're waiting for 2 more meetings. Is that correct, Mr. Kraus?
That's correct, Mayor. We're still waiting for a meeting with Alberta Transportation and K Division of the RCMP.
Okay, perfect. So like, I had Milton Elliott. I think we should do it sooner than the December, because their next meeting is December 9th for Cape. And so we would have to like if we wanted to join back into it, we'd have to know before their next general meeting with a letter, and then they discuss it at the general meeting. That's how their process seems to work. Does that make sense?
My only concern with kind of tying the needs of our community with the Highway 11 expansion and Cape is that they're not really the same project. And I'm worried that when we've got 15 minutes to talk to the minister, that we really need to be focusing on Highway 11 and bringing that all the way through. And although Cape has talked about a corridor, they haven't got a route figured out. They haven't got, I would just not want our aims to be obfuscated by something that isn't sorted out yet, specifically at the meeting with Alberta Transport. And if we need to have a meeting with Alberta Transport later, I get that, but we have so little time at that meeting. I want to make sure that the things that we need to get done here get done.
Absolutely. I'm not suggesting that we discuss Cape whatsoever at the meeting. I'm just saying that it makes us look like a better lobbying group if we're part of a bigger commitment for the corridor. You know, it's tongue-tied. It's a lobbying group that will get us. Let me just refer to my notes here. I'd sure like to give you some more information that I just received today from Cape, right? Because I was working with them actually before the conclusion of our election. And so, of course, every community got elected, and she's been quite busy doing things. So if it's not going to be discussed, for sure, that's not the purpose, is to discuss it at our 10-minute meeting with ministers. That's not the purpose. It's just to make us look better when we go and say, we really are interested about addressing this with the minister. Look, we've taken these steps forward. Rather than having the huge discussion about it. Like I'd sure like to give everybody some more information that I've been
Is there
using.
any reason why we can't on that meeting on the 16th then take 15 minutes of the meeting, discuss the more information?
Yeah,
Then put it on hold and do like Dave suggested, then we move on at the step meeting to talk more about it and
Yeah.
clarify it at that time?
certainly. Does
Then let's do that.
Counselor Phillips
Constable. I
gonna
like
get me
that.
get all day.
So just part of the background as to, I guess, the decision why we aren't part of Cape anymore is the bulk of their initiatives and the bulk of their planning is focused around the Highway 2 corridor, you know, the Penhole, Black Faults, Red Deer, that corridor, which, you know, is important to us, but as much as the Highway 22 corridor, Drayton Valley, Rocky, Sundre, Edson, Hinton. And I know previous to this council, Mayor Burke was trying to gather a group of, you know, Drayton, Rocky, Hinton, Edson, Sundre as a Highway 22 corridor, because that is probably more impact on Rocky than the Highway 2 corridor is. The Highway 11 corridor, again, is another topic all on its own. And yes, the twinning of Highway 11 to come through all the way through Rocky Mountain House is a very, very important thing to advocate for, as well as the House Pass. But again, the House Pass is one initiative of many that Cape is doing. And of course, we can always jump onto the House Pass advocating, say that 10 times fast. We can jump onto that discussion very quickly without having to be part of Cape. So it's just a lot of different prongs off of that one discussion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fraser.
That's okay. Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to extend on Councillor Phillips. And the history with Cape is Cape was built for the House Pass project. And I know that they're not calling it that right now, but we had moved away and we had started work on what would be more of a Western towns group, and he mentioned Edson and Hinton, and I think all the way up to White Court and then down to Sundre, and they were talking about that Highway 22 corridor. And I think that with that Highway 11, I think part of that push to get that Highway 11 through town will be to get them to deal with that Highway 22 exchange. And I think that would really change what that highway is able to handle and how people are able to come through Rocky and get onto that corridor. So just strategically, if we can only push for one road, if we can only get in front of the minister for one project, I think getting at Highway 11 to 22 and then working with the towns to build an economic corridor partnership with towns from our area. If you look at the area that Cape covers, a lot of it is Highway 2 corridor and east. And I appreciate that that's part of us, but if we can only do one project and we only have limited lobbying time, I think we should be focusing on that Highway 22.
Does anybody else have any more information? So can we just say that we'll carry this over to the, is that the correct way to phrase that?
Yeah, Mayor, you would need a motion from a counselor to postpone the Cape report to the November 16th council meeting. And that's
Councillor Phillips.
If there's no further discussion, I'd like to make a resolution that we move the Cape decision to the November 16th council meeting.
I think that's great. All in favor? Carried. The Youth Advisory Council bylaw. So I was just looking for a little bit more information on this because we didn't discuss it before our committee meetings, right? And then we did our committee meetings and I was just a little bit unsure. And you've been on, is that correct, Council Fraser? Would you like to?
Yeah, I can give a little more background. So in the community needs assessment and discussion with the community, a lot of what we heard was the youth aren't engaged, the youth don't feel connected to the community, the youth don't feel heard in the community. And we brought it back and said, how can we deal with this? How can we find a way where we can engage more with the youth? And so the discussion was that we build a youth advisory council and we invite youth from not just Rocky Mountain House, but Rocky Mountain House and Clearwater County. And I believe we even have one of the members from the nations on there as well. And they would be youth in our community that are interested in how the municipal government runs, how to make changes, how everything works. And one of the great things about this particular committee is, unlike regular public members that get an honorarium, is the honorarium that's connected to these positions is actually an educational bursary. So when the students spend 2 years on the committee learning and growing, they also will have an educational bursary at the end of it, which they can use to put towards any educational pursuit after they are done their term. So it took a while to get started, especially with COVID, but I think my favorite activity with them was taking them on a facility tour, because they had no idea of all the different things that the municipality did and how complicated a lot of things were. And they really enjoyed going into all of the boiler rooms and all of the pump shacks, so they could really see kind of the bones of what makes the municipal government tick. The other part of it is that they can bring the concerns that they have and that their peers have to this committee and ask questions. One of them was, should we put traffic lights in by the school because it sometimes gets a little congested? Our admin was wonderful and did up a report and said, here's the cost of traffic lights and here. And they said, whoa, I had no idea that traffic lights would cost that much. So what do we do now? Now we moved on to policy, and I believe we've written a letter to the admin of the high schools to discuss whether there can be staggered release times for the kids who work. So they've taken a problem and we kind of rained on their parade a bit with the traffic lights, but then we provided them the policy steps. So they've gone through the municipal process and they understand it really well. So part of why it's so important to me is that I think that that's a voice that we really miss a lot of the time, because they aren't quite voters yet, but they will be soon. And if we want them to feel connected to the community, we want them to stay here, we want them to come back, we need to open the door and invite them in.
Thank you very much for your information. Does anybody have any questions about this?
So I was looking over the minutes and stuff, and it seems like what has happened since, what, July 8th or July, earlier than that, June? Like, have they picked it up again, or who do they report to? Because there's nothing, I couldn't find anything on that.
So I think what we had our meeting in July, but then summer vacation, so the students went away. And then there was discussion as to whether or not they wanted to have a meeting in September because school had started, and then we canceled the one for October because it was a week after the municipal election, and I think it was the 25th, so we wouldn't have had our organizational meeting yet. But I think it's every 2 months-ish, but depending on their schedules, I know when they talked about, we're going to be away here, we'll move it around, but every 2 to 3 months we'll meet, and that gives them enough space.
Mayor, just to inform council, the next scheduled youth council meeting is November 22nd.
How do students become involved on this? Like, how were they chosen or whatever?
You want to answer it? So very similar to other committees is they put in an application, and there is a certain number of seats on council, and just like we did for the other committees, we go through the applications and they're selected. Although I think everybody who applied.
Mayor, that's correct. So I mean, I think under the bylaw, the amount of students can vary. I don't have the bylaw open right now, but from 6 to 10, I think it is. So every student that did apply for the Youth Advisory Committee was selected and participated.
And I'm sorry, you don't know the exact number of students that are involved right now?
Ms. Button, do you know offhand?
It's
7?
I want to say 7.
I Okay.
Get my computer. 7 sounds right. I know we had a graduation.
Okay, so,
Sorry.
no, go ahead.
Are the 7 students then a broad range throughout all our schools in Rocky, not just strictly like, still was unclear to me, but.
Yes, we have some, I think we have one from the junior high, she's in maybe 2 now. Okay, so for sure there was some from the junior high, some from the high school, there was some from St. Dom's, some from, and I think there is one from the nation. Okay. Yeah.
So I have a question on if there's, yeah. So my question was, so I believe that youth and having a voice in our community is very important, but do they not already have like student council that they can go through? And that where there's like an election process and that would follow along the same thing. And then, like all of our meetings are produced on like live, right? So that like those students could be, available to that. We're tying up like valuable resources, and not that I don't think youth should have a voice, but we're tying up valuable resources and time of council and administration for this project. And I'm just wondering for the, like, from what I understand, it's close to $8,800 for the year to run the project. That's what it was calculated out when you passed the bylaw in total cost per year for the Youth Advisory Committee is $8,880, which includes remuneration and anniversary. And so I'm just wondering if we should hold that meeting over until we talk about our budgeting for the year.
I guess the difference between student council and youth council is that specifically youth council is an outreach program that not only asks for the input of our students, but engages them in the process and in the municipal process. Student council does make policy within the bounds of the school, but it doesn't move beyond the school building. Whereas when we talked about the rec master plan and what's being missed and how can we work with the students at the skate park, one of the ideas that came forward from the youth council was to have an outreach event where we had a barbecue and where we weren't just across the table, where we were real people, so they could start to connect more with their municipal government. So I understand that student council is an activity that happens at the school, but that only includes students from that school, and they only deal with issues from the school, whereas this is more holistic, and it's also an outreach opportunity for the municipal organization to work with the youth.
Thank you very much for more information. I think it is a great idea. And like I said before, I really like that we're, addressing youth in our community. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily a financially responsible decision for council when we're having such a limited, and I'm just wondering if we could discuss it further when we get to the budgeting.
When we get to our service level reviews, we go through everything. So we'll go through the youth advisory, we'll go through every committee we're on. So just if we leave it till we go over it at that point, and there's no harm in waiting till we get there.
Okay. So could I have a motion that we postpone the meetings on
To make a
the,
motion that we postpone the meeting till we do our service review.
all in favor?
No, hang on.
Oh, sorry, I misunderstood. Counselor.
I'm not saying postpone the next meeting. I'm saying let's take this to the service level review and we continue at that point. We have one more meeting with these youth on the 22nd or whatever that is. I'm saying leave everything as is and then discuss it at our review.
Okay, guys. Counselor Fraser.
I agree with Councillor Auld. I also think, I know that because the mayor sits on that committee, I think it would help to, I guess, demonstrate what goes on at that committee. I know
Right.
when you're not on the committee, it's hard to say, oh, I don't see the value. So I think having at least one meeting
Right.
before we go into service level review would be a good thing.
Thank you very much. I think that's a great idea. Counselor Phillips.
Yeah, I like the fact, just keep it going as is, deal with it at the service level review. It's been a few years since I was a teenager. It's good to have the perspective of these young residents, which will become voting residents here soon. So it's always good to hear their point of view, their reactions to our decisions, because they don't understand, and it's good to take that information back to the school populations.
Would you like to make a motion then?
Yes, I will make a motion that we continue with the Youth Advisory Council and review it at the service level review.
Excellent.
Mayor, I
sorry.
think you now have two motions on the
Oh.
table. So
That's right.
Councillor Boniface's motion should,
So we have to vote on that, and is that correct? We vote on it and that gets set aside, and then we can vote on Len's?
I can, I'll rescind mine.
Okay, so let's first vote on Councillor's Boniface's motion, and all in favor. So that's,
Can I get that motion? Yeah.
I was trying to say exactly what.
okay, so do we,
Either one is good.
so would we like to just rephrase the original motion? Is that
Sure,
the
I'd like to make a
correct? Oh, I'm sorry.
You guys want to say?
Oh, sorry. Yes.
So be it resolved, the council postpone discussion regarding the Youth Advisory Council bylaw until the service level review in December 2021.
Yes. Okay, thank you very much. So all in favor? And carried. Thank you very much for your help. Okay, 8.3, the request for decision, Mr. Kraus, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to have Ms. Reese present this to council as she's the author of the amendments to the policy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Video surveillance policy. The proposed number is 012-2021. So the town recognizes the need to balance an individual's right to privacy and the need to ensure the security and safety of town employees, customers, and public property. Proper video surveillance, where deemed necessary, is one of the most effective means of helping to keep the town's facilities and properties operating safely and securely. The proposed revisions to the video surveillance policy provides a more detailed direction concerning the context, procedures, and protocols within the town installs and operates and monitors the surveillance cameras. In the digital age, it has become far more easier to collect, store, analyze, and share huge amount of personal information. As this privacy landscape continues to evolve, we must evolve with the town policy as well. So in this revised policy, I'm also proposing 2 additional schedules. A video surveillance incident report, which is Schedule E. So basically, this is a written record of an incident that's actually recordable. So nothing like minor stuff, more serious stuff. And a privacy impact assessment, also noted as a PIA, which is Schedule F. So this is to be used whenever there's a significant change made to the video surveillance program. So this would be moving forward. So if we wanted to set up more cameras somewhere else, we would assess it first. So in today's environment, assessing potential privacy risk is more important than ever. Our municipal office holds much more personal information today than when the Privacy Act became law in 1983. So this privacy impact assessment, the PIA, is a process to determine how a program or service could affect the privacy of an individual. It also helps to avoid or lessen possible negative impacts on privacy that may result from a program or a service. So the included PIA in the package is a template that can be used. It basically can be used to adjust it for initiatives ranging from something very simple to something very complex. It also follows the requirements of the FOIP Act regarding collection, use, and disclosure of personal information. So basically, we're just trying to make it more clear who can view, who can monitor. Mr. Kraus mentioned before at one of our meetings that, you know, we've streamlined a lot of processes. We don't have a, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Kraus, we don't have a monitor in the gym facilities at the complex. We now monitor it at the reception desk. So basically this says if somebody's working the reception desk, that's what they're doing. They're keeping on the monitors to make sure that, you know, kids aren't throwing weights or something upstairs. And so they're getting permission to use those monitors for that purpose only. So that has been added into this new policy.
Thank you very much. So does anyone have any questions about this policy? Do we need to go over all of the red lines, or can we make a motion to?
Mayor, you can make a motion. I think Ms. Breeze just kind of gave you a synopsis of what all the red meant.
Okay. Yes, Councillor All.
If there's no other questions or comments, I'll just make a motion that council adopt the video surveillance policy 012/2021 as presented.
All in favor? Oh, just a second.
So one amendment, I swap back appendixes and schedules. So I want to put them all as schedules straight through. So there is a couple spots under 3.3E. I put appendix, which should be Schedule F. One more in here under 9.9, Schedule A, not Appendix A. And-
7B then,
You got another one?
7.1B says Schedule E, so that's going to be, oh no, it is.
No, Schedule
E.
E is good.
Sorry.
And then the last one is under disclosure 12.1. It says Appendix A. So I want to keep it all streamlined through and put Schedule A.
So we can now proceed with the motion with those changes in mind that they'll update our copies. Is that correct? All in favor? That's carried then. Thank you very much. I skipped number 7, old business. So I just, we have no old business. And so we continue on from there. Sorry about that. I was so excited about the police report.
So, Mary, if there's no items under, you can bypass.
Okay, sorry. I noticed that afterwards and I'm like, so our next thing is number 9, correspondence for action. 9.1, Rocky District Victim Services request for 2021 to 2022 funding. And there was a letter and financial statements. Does anyone have any comments on that?
So Mayor, just to inform council, so there's various organizations that the town funds annually through our budget process. Victim Services is one of them. And each of those organizations submit a letter to council at this time of year to make sure that council considers it during the budget process. We also have another request from the Mel Society, which would be a new one. And administration has put that on our service level agenda for council to review all funding to organizations in our budget.
Okay, so then we need a motion to accept this for information for the service level review. Is that correct? Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to make a motion that we put the victim services request for $10,000 to the service level review.
Perfect. All in favor? And carried. So 9.2, the playground committee for St. Matthew's Catholic School request for a letter of support. And do we have any discussion on that?
Yeah, Mary, I mean, council wants to discuss, absolutely, but they're just requesting a letter of support for a grant application. So
Yeah, I'm just not clear on exactly my next step on that one. Do I make a motion that we write a letter for support for that? Okay, so I make a motion that we write a letter for support for the playground. All in favor? And carried. Correspondence for information. I'd like to make a motion to accept 10.1 to 10.9 for correspondence for information. All in favor? And that's carried. Mayor's report. 11.1. There's not a lot there, so we'll move on to the next thing. Oh, sorry. So I make a motion that we accept. No, I can't make a motion for my own motion. Sorry. Councillor Phillips, do you want to just proceed?
I'll just make the motion to accept Mayor Beach's report for information.
Oh, your microphone. All in favor? Carried. So 11.2 council reports, Councillor Ald's report. Would anybody like to make a motion? Oh, I would like, can I ask questions about Councillor Phillips' report? Okay, so I'm really excited about that. I get excited easily. So You went to the Recycle Council of Alberta.
Yeah,
And
correct.
did you want to just take a few minutes and talk about that, please?
Sure. So there was an update on the province's status on the EPR, which is extended producer responsibility. Yes, my mic's not on. There was an update from the province, from Minister Nixon, on the extended producer responsibility initiative that they're putting forward. Alberta is lagging behind in the country from an extended producer's responsibility, which for those in council that don't know what that means, basically what that means is the producers that produce materials and packaging for whatever product they sell, there has to be an end use for that product from a recycling point of view. And it's basically ensuring that those manufacturers use either recyclable materials or materials that could be compostable, or what material the packaging is made of, and what their solution is for an end life of that package. So Alberta is in the process of creating an EPR system, and it's coming along quite well. Plastics, from a global point of view, China had closed its borders to accepting plastics from everybody in the world, which created a huge plastic surplus in North America. So because of that, there's a lot of plastics that just isn't going anywhere. It's unfortunately being landfilled in some cases, which is not the best solution for it. So again, one of the initiatives from the Alberta government is to create Alberta as a plastics hub, so that we can take this material, recycle it, turn it into fuel, turn it into whatever needs to be done, and create Alberta into a leader of that, because our petrochemical industry is so strong here. That's the technology and the brains that are needed to create this infrastructure. So again, that's something that Minister Nixon had brought up, that we're trying to create Alberta into that society. And this would be something be good for the town of Rocky Mountain House to talk to the minister about and say, hey, how can we as a municipality create that kind of industry around this area? We create jobs, we create, something for this area. So it's a good thing. There was a lot of talk, and I won't go into great detail on, the differing type of technology, from bioplastics to, there's just so much information that I couldn't possibly do this in a couple of minutes, but those are probably the two key points, is that, the EPR is coming along well, and they're hoping to have that done in the next year or so. And they're trying to create Alberta into a plastics hub, so we can deal with this material that's unfortunately being landfilled in some cases. Did you have any specific questions?
Yeah, well,
or-
I
Okay.
I was really interested about the circular economies, and then how our council could take those initiatives, and move forward. And so I was just wondering if you came back with any ideas that you wanted to suggest, or that you were really excited about the circular economies, about recycling, reusing,
Yeah.
but not just recycling, reusing, but like it just never goes to the landfill, right?
Well, and recycling is good, don't get me wrong. Reusing is better than recycling.
Mhm.
When you recycle something, you have to go through the energy to break it down, reform it into a new item. When you're reusing it, you're just taking that item and reusing it multiple times. And then at the end life of that item, it gets broken down and put into something different. So from a circular economy point of view, it would be better for the town of Rocky to look at reusing options as opposed to recycling options. However, recycling is sometimes the only option in some cases. So if we want to further, the town of Rocky Mountain House to be a greener, more environmentally friendly community, we can look at more reusable solutions, and of course, more recycling solutions as well. And our green, the green bin program that we have now is fantastic. We did a tour of that here a few months back. And it's amazing how watching our organics go into this facility, and it's literally turned into usable soil within an 8-month period. It's pretty fascinating to see that.
Awesome. Can I ask where we are at with the share shed? Because it was going to get moved on the council meetings. I was tracking it through council meetings, but then I lost where we're at with that. Is that something we could address with administration at a later date? Because it's like on the same topic, like that's what made me think of it after I read your report.
Mayor, I can answer right now.
Okay.
That'd be a good administrative inquiry, but it seems to be the topic right now. So with the share shed, that building is actually owned by the Lions.
Mhm.
So to date, there's been no progress or initiative to reopen the share shed. But once council starts gaining traction and we get going, we'll have an environmental task force meeting, which really deals with that whole recycling, organics and waste stream.
Awesome. I just wanted to bring it up because I read your report and then like I Googled like the circular thing and it was like really obvious that would be a great way that we could move forward on that. So now, does anybody else have any questions? Okay, so back to my page that I've lost. I would like to make a motion that we accept all of the counselor reports as written. All in favor? And carried. Number 12.1, action list. Motion to accept the action. Go ahead, Mr. Kraus.
Oh, so yeah, no, thank you, Mayor. I was just going to actually run through it with council a bit. Just
Absolutely.
So council's aware what the action list is. So every resolution of council that directs administration, we put onto this action list and we bring it back to each council meeting just so council's aware of where we're at with the direction you have given us. So on this action list, anything that is crossed out has been completed. So there is still some outstanding ones, and I can just quickly run through them. The Mail Society, so it's a request from the Mail Society for annual funding. Council has instructed that to go to the budget meeting and service level review. So that'll stay on the list until council holds those meetings. The Parkland Regional Library System, that has been directed to go to budget for consideration. So that'll stay on there until our budget meeting. The private hydrant maintenance on private property. That's one issue that council is working on. And that is scheduled to come back to council on December 21st. So the reports being drafted and so forth. The AAPG, that's the Alberta Association of Police. We belong to that, and through our policing committee, council has directed us to submit a bid to host their conference in 2023, and that is in progress. The Lagoon Agreement, council has directed us to coordinate an ICC meeting with the county to discuss the Lagoon Agreement and of course cost sharing on our new wastewater facility. Mr. Reed with the county and myself have met, and that will be an upcoming meeting for discussion. Truth and Reconciliation. Council instructs us to contact the 60 Scoop Society regarding options for interactive displays like at the Christensen. Administration is working with the society for possible dates in 2022. And the last one there talks about the sports groups to address anti-racism awareness. Mr. Ament has talked to the groups, so we could probably take that one off. But what another initiative that actually isn't on this action list is that council has instructed administration to coordinate training for Indigenous awareness for both council and staff. So we'll include those costs for that training in the 2022 budget for council to decide upon.
Is that like where we would take a course, like there's a course offered through the University of Alberta called Indigenous, I think is it Indigenous Awareness? Sean McIntyre, the previous mayor of Sylvan Lake, took it and he recommends that one.
Yeah, Mayor, that's that's through the U of A, and it's an online course
Right.
actually, and it's $60. This
Yeah,
one.
You can also take it as a free thing. You just don't get a certificate.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. I think what council was looking for was a little more in-depth course. Well, the course through the U of A provides great history on the Indigenous people of our country. This is more training for recognition of the residential schools, the 60 Scoop, and so forth. I know there is a group just north of Red Deer, can't remember the name off the top of my head,
That's fine.
that offers this course, and will be bringing that cost to council. It's like a 3-day course, and it's more about the reconciliation. Now, we also have talked to our First Nations, Chiefs specifically.
Mhm.
And I don't know, we still have to have more discussions, but they are suggesting that it have a more local nature than just Canada-wide nature. So we will have more discussions with Chiefs on that.
Yeah, and then they just did their AGM at the Friendship Center, and I can't get their first name of Friendship Center right, but I know Glenn that was running for council is now he won the AGM, and so I look forward to speaking with him about. I'm sure they have some ideas that we could do locally as well. Any questions at this time? Okay, so yes. Mr.
If we're done with that topic, I'd like to make a motion to accept the action list as presented.
All in favor? And carried. So administrative inquiries.
I do have one administrative inquiry, just regarding, we have a new council here, the county has a new council. When I think we should have a meeting with both councils together to discuss, just see who each other is and have a talk with each other, and potentially talk about the topic of the joint development agreement, and see if that has any would have any traction with new councils.
I can answer that. Mr. Kraus and I have already talked to Christopher Reed and with Daryl Lougheed, and we're trying to get the 4 of us together to meet and have a discussion. First, we tried for this week, but everybody's schedule didn't seem to match up. So we're trying again for the next week. And we've decided, I spoke to Daryl the night of the AGM, and we're really excited actually to move forward. It seems like their council is pushing them just as much as we're excited. And so as soon as we do that, then the 4 of us will come up with a plan for both councils. And we also talked about the Stronger Together agreement, but we were going to talk first. Is that correct? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Kraus. So yay. Is there any more administrative inquiries?
Just have one. Are we planning a facility tour for council?
Your worship. So we are, and that was going to be a discussion with council. I know we're filling up your calendars pretty quick right now, but that is, if council desires it, I think we really wanted to do it before we at least get into budget discussions, because then when we talk capital, you can actually visualize what administration is talking to you about, especially when we talk pool filters or those type of items. So if council wants to establish a date, we can make it happen. Or we can come back to council with other dates.
Is it something that has to be done all on one day, or could we say like, I have an hour here and an hour there? Like what's more suitable? Because like everybody's got really super packed.
Yeah, Mayor, I don't think we could actually fit it all into one day too. I mean, because it involves quite a bit. I mean, it's a drive out to the sewage lagoon. It's an
Right.
exciting place, you know. It's the public works shop. It's the water treatment plant, and you can spend 2 hours in our water treatment plant alone just to understand the system there. it's the North Saskatchewan River Park. It's, am I missing anything? The Aquatic Center, the Christensen Center. I mean, because there's a lot that actually goes behind the scenes in those facilities,
Right.
like the ice plants and the pool filtration systems and so forth. So we can schedule probably 2 or 3 half days if that works for council.
Like, how does everybody feel? Like, is a half day too much to request to set aside? Can we cut it smaller? Can we do it on like a Saturday? Could we, like, should we like discuss with everybody, like outside of this meeting for what works best? Does anybody have any comments?
I'm fine with 2 half days. I'm fine with that format.
Yeah,
Yeah, my only reason for bringing it up is I want to make sure we put it in there before budgets, because I think when you're talking about a filter, it's really hard to.
Mr. Kraus actually already had it on the agenda because we talked like the very first day that was on his plan. It's just that we have to wait for all these other things to get scheduled in first, right? All our committee meetings and such.
Yeah, so Mayor, administration will just send out an email to council on, dates, and council can respond and we can go from there.
Perfect, fantastic. Any other administration inquiries? Did I miss anything? Okay, any notice of motion? No notice of motion. And so do we have anything to discuss in closed? Awesome. So if that is everything, where's my last line that I say? I'm going to ask for a motion to call am I wording it the right way? Okay, just adjourn it? The